Hey guys, this is Gamer Cow. Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. We're on to the second major segment of the Sun and Moon block now. So we're starting Ultra Prism, the beginning of the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon games in the video game land. Kind of weird in a way, I guess it's just how long this generation lasted in that aspect. But yeah, we're on to a new block and a new mechanic comes on in here as well, in the form of Prism Star cards. These are not restricted to just Pokemon, they can be trainers and energy as well. We will see an example of each in this set. And the main things that we have here, 2 points. The first is the return of the Lost Zone, technically, because these cards do go to the Lost Zone instead of the discard pile if they would ever go there. And the second thing is the Prism Star rule, which states that you can only play one of each Prism Star card in your deck. This is not quite the same as Ace Specs, where you can only play one total. You can, if you for some reason really wanted to, just for thematic sake I suppose, you could play Solgaleo and Lunala in the same deck. You just can only play one Lunala and one Solgaleo Prism. So, yeah. When it comes to them being Pokemon, even if they are normally evolutions, these things will be basic Pokemon. I think for the most part, it's just legendaries that end up getting the treatment for Prism Star, with 1 or 2 exceptions. So most of the time they're going to be basic Pokemon anyway, but Solgaleo and Lunala over here, they're basics too, so there is that. And like I said, we have supporters and other trainers in general will get the treatment as well. And we get an energy card in here as well, which is absolutely bonkers. We'll get to that as we go as well. This set's pretty big. I think there's about 187 cards in this one or something, when you include all the secret rare stuff down the bottom here. But yeah, there's a ton to talk about within this one. So many good cards to go over. Some missed opportunities as well, but we will get to that as we go. Promo cards first, there's a couple down the bottom. There's only one that's really worth talking about, but this was the debut of the Ash's Pikachu stuff as well here. One of the things in the video game for, I believe it was like 20 years of the anime at this point. Celebrating that was, or like getting close to that at the very least. We had Ash, all of Ash's hats basically from the different blocks of the anime. And there's the same Pikachu with all of them. These scans are like absolutely horrific quality. I have no idea what's happened here, but it's almost like someone's taken a lathe to them. It's just hilarious, but it doesn't matter. They're all the same thing. None of them are actually any good. You would not be able to play all 4 or all like 7 of them in the same deck because they are the same name. But again, who really cares? It can't evolve into Raichu anyway, so it's terrible. As far as the non-dumb promos go, we have a pretty terrible Raikou over here. I would never consider playing this. Its HP is on the lowest end when it comes to GXs, like 170 is on the lowest end of attacking ones. Its attacks are all pretty terrible. Double Colorless Energy for 30, not great. 150 for 2 lightning and a double colorless, and if you flip tails you do 50 to yourself. On 170 HP, get stuff, that doesn't even do anything good anyway. And for 4 lightning energy, it's not even the same attack cost as the second attack. 100 damage to each of the opponent's Pokemon that already has energy on them, which can just be played around. So it's absolutely awful. There's nothing good to say about this Raikou. I think it is the only one of the legendary beasts that didn't actually get a full art card though, from what I was reading, so that's kind of weird. The actual important one here is Lucario. This did top quite a few events. I think it might have won one of the events in this block as well. 210 HP, it evolves some 70 HP Riolus, so that's really good for the survivability of the card. And it's very similar to Golisopod, but in a better typing for the most part. Aura Strike does only 30 damage for 1 fighting, but if you evolved from Riolu this turn, it does 120. So rather than having to switch from bench to active, you have to evolve the Riolu in order to do the bonus damage. This combines quite well with stuff like Acerola, because the card is likely to take a hit, unless it's getting hit for weakness. and so you could then Acerola it back up after the opponent damages it, evolve a fresh Riolu on the bench, and yeah, strong energy compatible, so it gets up to 140, Choice Band gets it to 170, you can gust up Lele's and stuff with that as well. Very strong. Also hits Zoroark for weakness, so it just one-shots without any sort of buff on there. It's really good. The rest of the card, well, Kantangura's Beatdown GX is actually pretty good. It's the same attack as what Tauros had, 30 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. You do have slightly more HP than a Tauros does at base, so that's kinda cool, but it's mostly just the intermediate attack between the other two that we have here. I really wish that Cyclone Kick was fighting double colorless, but it's not. 2 fighting a colorless to do 130, decent damage. Put 2 strong energy on that as the Dex 10 to, and that's 170, so that is a really good number to hit. It's just that it's too expensive really, right? You can't go Aura Strike with the single attachment for the previous turn, and then go into Cyclone Kick the turn after. That doesn't work, so it's very difficult to actually power that up, and most of the time that's not really what you're going to see this card do. But the rest of it is really, really good, and it works very well in the current format. So, strong one to have around. As far as the trainers go, there's actually a lot of them in here, and there's a lot of Gen 4 in this set in general. So we get stuff that works with, say, Regigigas over here. Ancient Crystal, unfortunately, is just another walling tool. It's kind of annoying. The Regi Pokemon that it's attached to take 30 less damage from the opponent's attacks. It obviously doesn't say with Regi in name, it names them specifically. So in the future, if you were to, for some reason, play Expanded like Regi's in Gen 8, you would not be able to use this on Aleki or Drago, but that's fine. Silly future-proofing, right? Who needs it? Cynthia is ridiculous. It's the return of Professor Oak's new theory. Shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 6 cards. This will end up being one of the singular best supporters that we have after the XY block rotates, but even just now, this starts eating into the N and Sycamore counts, and it's no longer a guarantee that we're going to see like 4 N, 4 Sycamore in the deck, because this is very, very powerful. Obviously, it's a really good amount of cards to draw. It's Shauna +1, and it means that you don't have to discard all of your stuff like rare candies, etc. when you really don't want to in evolution decks. But even just in basic stuff as well, Shuffle Draw 6 is amazing. There's not always going to be, like, you don't always want to play everything in the hand. You can't always play everything in your hand, and sometimes you just really need those resources later on. Puzzle of Time is another good example. You don't want to ditch Puzzle if you don't have to. So, stupidly good card. Has a couple of fantastic artworks as well. The one that we don't see within this set is the one we'll probably all be playing, is the second full art reprint. This one's really cool too, but like the second full art has got the shiny Lucario and the Garchomp in the background, and it just looks amazing. Exceptionally expensive back in the day, and I can see why. Cyrus is our Prism Star supporter for this set, so again, we can only play one of it. There's a fun story behind this one. It wasn't printed correctly initially. This had to get an errata. Got a very, rapid errata, to be fair. It did not say active Pokemon on the original card. It was supposed to, because that's how the Japanese card worked, but this is one of the very few times in, since Gen 5 where we've had an actual translation mistake on the card. You can only play Cyrus Prism Star if you're active as a water or a metal Pokemon, but then the opponent has to shuffle all but 2 of their bench Pokemon back into their deck. Kind of absurd. Obviously it doesn't stop them playing Pokemon back down, and sometimes I guess they just get, if they've played like a couple of Lele, this can end up just being good for them. So you gotta time it, I guess, to be like most devastating. But this absolutely cripples Zoroark decks. If you can Cyrus them to 2 and KO their active, they have to rebuild something fierce, and most of the time that's going to be extremely difficult to do. So it can be devastating in the right situation. Now, before the translation correction, it was conceived that like artillery stocks ended up going very, very high with this, as did Alolan Vulpix, because those were water Pokemon, and if they didn't have to be active, then you didn't have to worry about the condition, right? So yeah, it could be just played whenever. It's kind of silly. Sylvali gets 2 more memories in here, the electric and fire memories. The fire one is kind of useful because it gets rid of metal decks, which are actually really good in this set, and Glycopod is still kicking, so that's fine. Lightning is situationally okay. I don't think we're really seeing Celesteela anymore because the metal stuff in this set kind of eclipses it, but we could still see Ho-Oh. That did top at this time. So being able to hit Ho-Oh for a one-shot is very good. Obviously Ho-Oh can just one-shot you, so you do have to kind of keep up in that prize exchange. And most of the time Sylvali is getting played with Metal Pokemon at the moment, and Metal Pokemon being weak to Fire, you know, the rest of that deck is also really bad against you. Ideally you would want a Water Memory as well, because Salazzle's still a problem, but can't have everything. A Skateboard is a card for the future. I love the idea of this one, and Andrew Mahone, Tricky Jim, definitely took this one on board for part of his brand. He loves skateboard and stuff, and this just works out super well. It is the next form of Floatstone, but is much weaker in terms of how, you know, little energy you have to pay. You only get a retreat cost reduction of 1. Which is something we're going to see for the rest of this generation. There is another surfboard type thing that comes in later on that also reduces by 1. But there is an upside to this which will be relevant in the future. You cannot force the Pokemon to stay in by putting it to sleep or paralyzing it so long as this is here. If you have a paralyzed Pokemon on the active, a Skateboard will still let it retreat. My headcanon is that it gets paralyzed lying on the board, and then the board just rockets off to the bench, and that's great. So, yeah, this will be really good when Jirachi comes out, because Jirachi's ability puts itself to sleep, but does incredible things for consistency. So, we'll be seeing this later on. It's used all the time for Jirachi builds. I forget exactly when that comes out. I think it might be Celestial Storm. So by the end of the format we might have that, so, or maybe it's the one after that, I don't know. Has a really cool alt art as well, but it does have the leak stamp, so I'm probably not playing it, but I almost expect Pepper's going to play this one. Oh, Sai, he likes some of them as well, so yeah. Gardenia, not amazing. Heals 80 damage from one of your Pokemon that has a grass energy attached. That's like okay as far as supporter effect goes. But 80 damage it's a lot, but having to be in grass or playing Rainbow Energy kind of makes this unusable. We do still have Lana in the format that only heals 50, but it heals 50 from every Pokemon that has the Water Energy on it, on your side of the field, so that's probably better. But also, at least before rotation, we have Pokemon Center Lady, which heals 60 and special conditions without any strings attached to it. That's usually enough. Maybe that 20 health is going to matter, but yeah, generally that's going to be fine. So not really going to see this. Maybe if VS Seeker was still in format, because then you could play it as a tech one-of and it'd be fine. But it's not, so oh well. Lily gets a reprint in here. I really like the full art for this one. This is the one that I will be using if I ever play Lily, which we will post-rotation. It's one of the best draw supports we have at that point. Really cool regional one here as well, though. Even if the card scan quality is not that amazing, the picture is really nice, so that's cool. Looker is a very weird card to have here. This draws 3 cards, just like How, but it draws it from the bottom of the deck. The main reason, there's 2 main reasons this is relevant. One is the control matchups, because sometimes control decks don't want to get rid of the cards in their hand, they want to be turboing through the deck, but they don't want to play Sycamore all the time because they want the resources in the hand. You could just play How, but this can not only draw from a bottom deck thing, which actually does matter sometimes, we'll get to why in a bit, but there's also Looker Whistle here, which you could play to search out 2 Lookers from your deck. This basically deck thins as well as getting the draw supporter. It might not be a very strong draw supporter, but control decks don't always need to draw like, you know, 60 cards per turn sort of thing, right? So if they can get to the bottom of the deck, they'll probably be fine. And to actually just go into why the bottom deck is important, probably my least favorite card in this entire block, to be honest, is in here. Oranguru has resource management as an attack for 1 energy. of any kind, it puts 3 cards from your discard pile to the bottom of your deck in any order. So Looker combined with Oranguru will let you just Hollow Hunt basically, not for free, but very similar to it. And you can just get whatever crap you need to keep going off of that. It's really annoying. But resource management in general, there's going to be a lot of control loops that end up happening this gen. I don't know how many we're going to end up showing off because none of us really like playing this sort of thing. But I guess I'll have to see how many got wins and stuff. I know there are definitely some players that topped in this era with control decks, and this is one of the reasons why. This feels like it shouldn't have been printed in this era. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, another control tool that's coming back actually from Generation 4 is Mars. So you draw 2 cards, and then if you do that, you discard a random card from the opponent's hand. Not particularly strong by itself at the moment, and I forget if the previous version of this actually discarded or bottom decked the card. But regardless, I think it might have bottom decked actually. Regardless, this one discarding the card actually does end up mattering later on. When we get to the full power of control stuff here, this is one of the many hand destruction tools that they will have available to them, and it might not be the strongest one, but it also does draw you cards, so sometimes that's going to matter. One key thing to note about all of the supporter stuff like this is that Lusamine is in format, so you can recover the supporters straight to hand if you need to. So once you can play, let's just put it out there, once you can play multiple supporters in a turn, stuff like this ends up becoming a lot stronger. Fully into the gimmick category for this round is Missing Clover. If you only play one of these, you get to look at the top card of your deck, which is absolutely awful and should never be used under any circumstance. If you manage to play all 4 of these at the same time, you get to take a prize card. For nothing. It only works one time, even if you recover all of them, so don't think about doing quadruple puzzle of time and taking 2 prize cards with this. It is not allowed. Yeah, obviously there are a crazy number of holes in the strategy that comes with this thing. Gladion, I guess, could get them out of the prizes, but that's the biggest thing, is prizing them. Obviously, the second big problem is discarding them and whatnot. And yeah, I don't know, I guess you could Sylveon and take them that way, but Sylveon is a control deck, doesn't really want to be doing this, so there isn't exactly a home for this card, and that is probably for the best, because this sort of thing is really bad for the format if it actually ends up being good. So yeah. Mount Coronet, the stadium cards are finally starting to pick up a little bit more in power here. Mount Coronet is fantastic for the metal deck of this set. Once during each player's turn, that player may put 2 metal energy from their discard pile into their hand. The energy accelerant we'll get into is from hand in this set, so this actually is ridiculously good for that deck. And if you're not already playing Field Blower, you should or a Counter Stadium, or both, you should probably start doing so, because otherwise you're going to get run over by that deck. Order Pad, probably the most annoying card of this set that actually sees play. It's like one of the worst cards that sees competitive success type of thing. You flip a coin, and if heads, you search your deck for an item card, reveal it, put it into the hand. So, sure, I guess in Stage 2 decks, I mean, it shows all the ones that you would want to get there just about, except the Repel, we don't need that. Max Potion would have been a better one to put there, probably. But yeah, you can get stuff like Ultra Ball, obviously. Escape Rope is pretty good. Crushing Hammer is less good, because you got to flip heads on that as well, but it's still there. Rare Candy is the main thing I could see this being used for at the moment, where you candy into stuff because you just get to search it. And then, yeah, like Max Potion would have probably been the best one for the other section there. Very irritating card to have around. It does end up seeing competitive success later on, partly because of Andrew Mahone in Pikarom, but yeah, when it's just you really need to get the most powerful items possible off the thing, you'll flip a coin for it. It's gross, but it is how it be. Power Pad makes its return. This was printed in Flashfire, I believe, is the last time this came out, so we don't ever get VS Seeker back, but Power Pad is also in the standard format at the time of recording as well. So, shuffle 2 supporters from the discard into the deck, pretty good. It means we do have ways of reusing some of the stuff in particular decks, especially Zorak, I guess, could be pretty cool with this. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a good strategy with a Garchomp in this set, which requires that as well. But, yeah. Fan Club stays in the format here. This is not a this is not like a reintroduction per se. What it does do, though, is it gives me the full art. I mean, I've already been using it, obviously, but this is the full art of Fan Club that I've been using the whole time, because it's just the best looking one to me, so yeah. Unidentified Fossil comes in here. This is actually important. Gen 7, it's the first time we're seeing fossils in Gen 7, and they have ditched the stupid bottom deck mechanic that they've been working with throughout the EX era. Now, Unidentified Fossil plays very much the same as what it did in Generations 3 and 4, where it counts as a basic Pokemon when you bench it, and you get to discard it if you want to, but it does give up a prize if it dies. Also, can't retreat. Unfortunately, it is affected by special conditions at this point, so the fact that it gives up a prize, it's only got 60 HP. I say only, it's a evolving basic, I guess that's fine. The big disadvantage with this, and what still keeps most fossil decks down for good, is the fact that you can't play this during setup. I really wish that was the sort of way. You know, Generation 4 did that, although Generation 4 forced you to do that. Maybe it would have been more reasonable to allow you the choice. Because the fact of it's not... And the other thing is that it's not counted as a Pokemon whilst it's in the deck. So, the other thing I kind of wish that it would do, maybe it'd be too strong? Make it like a trap monster in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you get to count it as a Pokemon and an item in the deck. And then maybe fossils would actually be good. I don't know. Probably play them at that point at least. Volkner is our last supporter card here, and well, I'm probably going to at least try this. I haven't quite refined the deck for it yet, but I wanted to build a Magnezone Shining Rayquaza deck last round for stuff, and I was using Skylar to try and get Rare Candy. Volkner lets you search for an item and a lightning energy at the same time, and ends up being exceptionally powerful later on in the format when lightning becomes a really good deck again. But even just now, it's like Ray takes a lot of lightning energy, Magnezone can accelerate that lightning energy from the hand, you can get the rare candy that you need for the zone. Like, there's a lot of good things to like about this card. Also has a really nice League promo, or League challenge card here. The full art one is pretty stellar though, so go with that. Finally, to the special energy, we'll talk about the Prism Star one after we mention the unit energies real quick. We only get 2 of the 3 this time, but these are very much like the blend energies from Generation 5. They provide 3 different types of energy at a time, and we have Water, Fire, and Grass here, and then Metal, Psychic, and Lightning as the other one. The one that we'll get next set is the Fairy, Dark, and Fighting one, but for now, we'll have to leave that be. But yeah, these are essentially, now there's 9 types of energy in Gen 7, we have the 3 times 3 for the stuff here. Unit energies do technically have a secondary function with Kecleons that come out. There's a Kecleon for each different unit energy. I think it makes it the types that are on it or something. Or maybe it like changes its attack cost, I don't remember. I think it makes it the types that are on the cards. And they have like different attacks that they can use, so that's kind of cool. Anyway, the Prism Star energy for this round is Super Boost Energy, which is a ridiculous card. There's no other way of putting it. It's not going to see play immediately, but once we get to Celestial Storm and we get access to the last Stage 2 that God of War needs for the stuff here, this is going to get crazy. So, Super Boost Energy provides a colorless energy normally, but then it provides a rainbow energy if it's on a Stage 2, which is pretty cool. Stage 2s do need a decent bit of support, so it's nice to have something like that. However, if you have 3 or more Stage 2 Pokemon in play, it provides 4 rainbow energies. No other card in the history of the game has provided not only this much energy in one go, but this many rainbow energies in one go either. This ends up being absolutely absurd with Gardevoir because, of course, you get 4 extra energies on it. That is ridiculous. But it also basically enables you to play, like, any sort of tech attacker that you would want if you can get it into play, like, Stage 2 wise, right? which obviously is really difficult to do, but there are a couple of crazy decks later on that do like flood stage 2s into play, and it's great. It's a very cool idea, so yeah. On to the Pokemon then. We have a fair few that are worth noting in here. Unfortunately, not a lot at the start. One of the things we will get from this, especially being a Gen 4 heavy set, like a lot of these Pokemon will actually get alternate type retrains in the next set. So like Torterra over here, it's not very good really, but it does get a fighting type version in the next set, so that's kind of cool. Unfortunately, the basics don't get retrained obviously because they're not actually, you know, alternate types. These are pure grass types and stuff, so they can't get retrained. Yeah, so that's kind of annoying, but it's a cool idea nonetheless. Yeah, Torterra is just too expensive. It's got a massive HP total, but it just doesn't have the required energy. Like, it's too much energy to pay for that. Leafeon is one of the, like, biggest flop cards, I would say, for this era, but on the surface this thing looks ridiculous, and I can see a couple of decks I would want to play this in. 200 HP, it is an evolution, so it can energy evolve from the Sun and Moon base set Eevee, and well, its actual attack is not too super good. It's the same as Sylveon, like grass double colors 110, okay. I guess it kills Lycanroc in the for the Zoroark deck, that's kind of neat. Breath of the Leaves is what you are hoping to use, I guess, later on, rather than Solar Beam. If it's active, you can heal 50 damage on one of your Pokemon that's got an energy on it. Kind of cool, I suppose. It can keep itself alive a little bit. Mostly, this is here for the GX attack, though, and it's why I think Zoroark is probably its main home. Grand Bloom GX for 1 grass energy, the one that you energy evolve with, lets you basically just go, I'm evolving every single one of my bench basic Pokemon. That's it. For each of your bench basic Pokemon, search your deck for a card that evolves from it and put it onto that Pokemon. What people initially thought this was going to be ridiculous for was Decidueye, because Decidueye is really cool, right? It does a lot of damage with its feather arrows as you go around, and you could just go get Eevee into the active, like probably play a switch or something like that, energy evolve it, Grand Blue, and you could evolve like 3 Rowlets into Dartrix in one turn. And then next turn they can all go to Decidueye and you've got your combo. Problem is that's just like too awkward. I think this is better for the stage 1 type stuff, and Zoroark is really the one that I would target here, because if you get triple Zoro in play initially, and then Grand Bloom into the Zoroarks, you already have all of your trades set up, and they're all pretty much safe as well, because Zoroark has got a lot of HP. So yeah, I think that could be neat. We were sort of theorizing this as like a one-of in Golisopod as well for the Zoroark deck, because the Wimpod could zero retreat into Eevee with its ability, and then gets evolved into Golisopod as well. So like, I think there's something there. The only tournament success this ever had though was an expanded in a ridiculous like Vileplume Sceptile GX deck, and it was as a 1/1. So never really saw tournament play, but we have some ideas that could make it cool. The Rotom forms in this set, they all have different names, so you can play all the different types. The base Rotom, the Lightning one, is going to get a Psychic Retrain in the next set, and that like brings it all together. They all have low HP, not amazing attacks, but they do cost a lot of energy. But you get to ignore that energy cost via its ability, if you have 9 or more Pokemon tools in your discard pile. You just get to ignore all the energy attack in the attack costs. Now, Mo Rotom unfortunately is not amazing, it only does 60, but it does discard the special energy as well. Disruption stuff is kind of neat, but the damage is like 10 too low for Choice Band to KO Lycanroc, so I'm not a huge fan of this one. The Heat Rotom just does a straight 80 damage, but that's okay, because if you Choice Band that gets to 110, which is enough to KO the main Pokemon GX that you'd be interested in taking out. The Frost Rotom does 10 damage plus 20 for each energy that's on all of the opponent's Pokemon. Can be okay in the right matchup. Not a lot of decks flood that many energy into play, and maybe they'd be a bit more careful about it if this is going to be able to get a KO, but it is pretty solid into the fire decks, you know, weak to water obviously, so there is that. Wash Rotom snipes 50 on one of the opponent's bench. It does not hit actives, so there's like basically no use for this one, unfortunately. Really don't care for this. The basic Rotom does 120, but can't attack next turn. That's fine, because you can just retreat it, and that's pretty good. Or it dies, because it's only got 70 HP. And then all the way down the bottom, the Fan Rotom is Tapu Koko. Does 20 damage to each of the opponent's bench. Oh, and the active as well. It does have 0 retreat, it is the only one that does, but all the other ones are 1 retreat, so they can retreat quite easily. But yeah, it's also not amazing. I probably would just play Koko, but I guess it can be okay. I don't think you're going to get enough end tools in the discard pile that quickly though, in order to make it work. But hey, it's a fun little gimmick idea, and there are some ways of making it happen. So yeah, the main deck I've seen with it at the moment was a Zoroark deck that played like 3 different ones of these. I've put Gorgeist in there as well because of the tool discarding attack. That's kind of neat, but I don't know if it's going to come into play at all, but it's good to know at the very least. We have a Shaman that looks really freaking cute over here, and it would have been amazing in a different era, but because we can't attack going first, Coax is just not great. Search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon of different types, put them onto the bench. There are quite a few decks that we could make that work in, and it doesn't have any exclusions like you can't search GXs, so there's some fun stuff you can do with that. I just don't think it's quite there, unfortunately. Just because we can't attack going first. And we have Bridget and Fan Club obviously is a thing, so I don't think we need this kind of attack, and it doesn't do anything else, so too bad for Shaman. Looks exceptionally cute though. The Araquanid from the Sun and Moon base set gets a Grass type retrain here, so this ends up being kind of funky, because it still has the immunity to fire Pokemon, so it technically doesn't get hit for weakness, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it's a grass Pokemon that is immune to fire. This technically, not this card, but the next version of this technically ended up being very good in one of the Players' Cups formats, because there's a fire deck that was absolutely dominant, and they had no out to it. So it was great. Very silly. The Magmortar does 160 if you discard 2 energy from it, but it takes 3 energy to begin with. Fire doesn't really have great acceleration right now, so, or at least not long-lasting acceleration, so it's a good amount of damage. It's the same amount of damage Turtonator does, and it's on a 1-prizer, but it's just not quite strong enough, I don't think. You do take some damage back if you attack it, though, because you get auto-burned, and that does do 20 immediately, so yeah, gotta be a little bit careful about numbers there. The Infernape technically synergizes with that by making Burn do 6 instead of 2 damage counters. Its attack is exceptionally weak, which is very annoying to be honest, because it means that it just is not good with Choice Band and stuff as well. But technically, if you do hit for weakness with Choice Band, you would do like 160, then the Burn, because of doing 6 damage counters, takes it to 220, so it can still kill the fire weak stuff that way. It does 160 to non-GXs, or without the Choice Band, so like that's fine, but yeah, it's just very underpowered, to be honest with you. There's the Salazzle in here that I think is kind of cool. If the opponent's afflicted by a special condition, then this does 120 for a Fire and a Colress. The inline Salazzle from Guardians Rising does Poison and Burn, so that's how you get the status conditions on. Or you could use like a Nihilego or something to do that. And it's for a counter energy as well. That can come up sometimes, so it's a decent amount of damage. Poison Burn takes it to 150, Choice Band takes it to 180. That's enough to KO Lele's and stuff, so it can come up. Probably not strong enough, mind you. And if the opponent just doesn't bench a ton of Lele's and whatnot, you're probably not getting it. On to the water Pokemon, we have Empoleon as one of the big ones here. 160 HP, pretty good to be honest. It does survive quite a lot of hits, being a non-GX as well. And its main traits, it's weak to lightning instead of grass, which is good for a water type. Most of them are weak to grass at the moment, and they just get shredded in Glycopod matchups. This one doesn't, so that's kind of cool. And also, Total Command is a really good attack as well. For a water and a colorless, it does 20 for each benched Pokemon in play. Both players, so it can cap out at 200 damage, which is pretty freaking good for a counter energy. It's also in water, so Aqua Patch is possible. So one of the things I tried to build, I haven't really gotten the list down for it, so I don't know if it's going to get played at all. But Zoroark Empoleon was an obvious thing to look at here. Discard Water Energy, Aqua Patch it back. Zoroark also wants you to have a full bench, so it kind of synergizes well. And yeah, it's neat. I don't know. One of the other ways you could get Water Energy to it though, if you just play it pure, is with a Abomasnow. This gives you a Water Energy from your discard pile to any of your Pokemon, not just your bench ones, when you evolve into it. So it's also, its attack is terrible, we don't really care there, but it can accelerate to the active, which really helps out with the Empoleon. So this might end up being the better way of doing things. The fact if you're in water as well means you've got Brooklet Hill, and you can also play Octillery for draw. You probably don't play very many of this, maybe 2 at most if you can fit them in, but the deck sort of lines up, it's kind of neat. Then we have Glaceon. This did see tournament success alongside Zoroark, and actually I think I've seen it with Garb as well, which was kind of weird. 200 HP, once again an evolution, so you can energy evolve into it, and it has the Freezing Gaze ability that you might actually want to do turn 1 going first. If this Pokemon is in the active spot, it prevents GXs and EXs from having abilities, only on the opponent's side. So each of their EXs and GXs in their hand and discard pile and in play don't have abilities. So this means Tapu Lele can't do its thing, it means Zoroark can't do its thing, it means anything in a discard doesn't work. I can't think of any immediately that work off the discard, but I'm sure there will be in the future. And yeah, it's gross in that aspect. Glaceon tends to do this quite a bit, and really what holds Glaceon back is the rest of the card. 200 HP, not amazing, it's good enough, but it's not ridiculous. Frost Bullet is no longer the sort of attack it used to be. This is the same thing as Shadow Bullet from Umbreon, and it's Night Spear back in the day. 1 water, double colorless, 90, 30 to one of the opponent's bench. Okay, it's fine, but it's not going to win the game by itself, and it really needs to stay active too, that's the annoying thing. Polar Spear GX is okay as well if you can get the damage set up. For the same cost as Frost Bullet, it does 50 for each damage counter on the opponent's active Pokemon. So the magic number I believe is 5, because then it gets to 300 total damage and that KOs everything even later on in the game. Most of the time 4 is going to be sufficient because that gets you to 240, so yeah. Or if you get 3 damage counters from the Frost Bullet, put them onto a Lele, Lele then takes 150 from this and it gets KO'd anyway. 3 damage counters plus Choice Band also gets there on the 210 HP guys, which is most of the stage 1 stuff. So it kind of works well enough with its own attack. You just need to play Choice Band on it as well at that time. So yeah, it's a one-shot style GX attack. Pretty okay, but it's a bit expensive. It takes a lot of setup, and again, this thing is quite frail, but it will absolutely dumpster the right deck that it goes against. So yeah, especially because you still get to play your abilities, that is kind of gross. Then on to the lightning Pokemon, we have a Shinx that I don't know if it's banned and expanded at this point. I know a similar Pokemon later on does get banned. I don't think this is one of them because it doesn't go into a disruption attack ability immediately. Evolutionary Advantage is something we do see occasionally on basics at this point. If you go second, you can evolve this during the first turn, and that's fine. It's a 50 HP guy, but it's okay because the other one's not particularly great, so we're fine with that. It's just got 60 HP instead, I suppose. What it evolves into is Luxio, which does 30 damage for 1 colorless energy. Only 80 HP on this thing, but it's fine because 30 damage, disconnect. Opponent can't play items next turn from their hand. Ruh-roh, it is back with Seismitoad. But the problem with this, of course, is that it is an evolution, a very frail evolution at that, and that's not amazing. But it's still there, and there is a deck that you can build with this. Because it does evolve into something that's kind of neat as well. Locks rate, 150 HP, 0 retreat on this as well, which is pretty good. Intimidating Fang is a fantastic ability to have around. If it's active, the opponent's active does 30 less damage to you, so that's pretty cool. And its attack is Volt Bolt. 2 lightning in the colors to discard all the lightning on it and snipe 150 from one of the opponent's Pokemon. Pretty cool. 150 is not quite enough to KO Lele's on the bench, unfortunately, but it does deal with almost every other one-prizer. It's very good against spread decks because it does all of your Pokemon take 30 less damage, so that's really good. Stops Tapu Koko from being a thing, and there is Shining Celebi in the format. So if you play Shining Celebi, you can use its ability to copy the Disconnect. And so you don't have to Volt Bolt every time. You can disrupt with Disconnect whilst having damage reduction until you are ready to hit out. So there is actually something here. I just haven't built it because I'm not going to be that guy right now. But I don't know. It's a fun rogue deck at the very least. I don't think it ever saw any success, but it's neat. Good idea. Pachirisu eventually ends up being really good. I think I have seen the Raichu GX topping list with this right now, which I am stunned at because we don't have half the support yet. But I guess the Pikachu has Nuzzle, so it works out. This thing is for a Snuggly Generator and nothing else. It has the Nuzzle attack, which is actually key for it to work here. Snuggly Generator lets you accelerate a lightning energy from your deck to each of your bench Pokemon that has the Nuzzle attack. The Pikachu from Generations does have Nuzzle, so this synergizes with the Raichu GX's attack that does bonus damage for every lightning energy that you have in play. The problem is the Raichu doesn't have Nuzzle, we don't get that until Cosmic Eclipse, and there's also a missing piece in the Emolga, which I don't remember when we get, but that searches the deck for Pokemon that has Nuzzle, and it also has Nuzzle itself. So we need that first, but yeah, I did see someone top with this. It's absolutely crazy. I don't think the list was posted, but it's just wild that it actually saw play already. Shades of 2014, I guess. On to the Psychic type stuff. There's a few interesting bits in here. We were laughing when we were looking at the set after the games on Saturday that if Pepper had access to this card in our game, I would have been cooked, and that's probably correct. Damage Transport from Drifblim lets you move damage counts from each of your Pokemon to the opponent's active, so I would have had to kill this with Artillery or Rally Back or something like that. Would have been very funny, but yeah, anti-spread, kind of cool, but you're never going to see this teched into anything because it's too specific, really. I remember the Spiritomb being pretty cool in the theme deck battles. I believe the Garchomp, I think it was Garchomp Lucario actually in this set as well, which we'll get to in a sec. It just put supporters from the discard back into the hand, which meant you could get the Cynthia back, and that makes the whole deck tick. So, kind of cool. There's a Drapion that's got a 4 Psychic Energy attack cost. Just want to note it because it's absolutely bonkers that they would print something with that attack cost. Auto Paralysis, at least it's cool that way, but like, you're never getting that energy on. Toxicroak makes a lot more sense next set when it gets the alternate type version that does the opposite of this one. Exact Revenge is what we're looking at here. For a double colorless energy, you do 50 plus 70 if a fighting Pokemon on your side was knocked out by damage last turn. The retrain, or the typing will be fighting on the other one, and it does it for if your Psychic Pokemon got KO'd. So it probably works better as a fighting type because of what's in next set, but this one still like combines with it as well. It hits for Psychic Weakness obviously, which is very good for Buzzwole. The fighting one will hit for Zoroark, so they've got good complementary typing on each other, and yeah, next set might actually be playable. Giratina Prism Star, and to the same extent Darkrai Prism Star does the same thing here. It's 160 HP basic, so it's like a stage 2 but as a 1 prizer. When you bench it, you can put up to 2 psychic energy from your hand onto the Giratina. Could combine with Ninja Boy in that aspect, so lets you get the energy on the thing you actually want. Crisis Dive is pretty okay though. For a whopping 4 psychic energy, you do 160 damage, you then have to discard 2 of the psychic energy from this Pokemon. Not too good in this set, but next set, when we can accelerate that psychic again, it's okay. It's not the worst Pokemon in the world. Does do a reasonable amount of damage at the very least. The Darkrai that kind of mirrors it here does the same ability but for Darkness Energy. When you bench it, attach 2 Darks from the hand to it. And then Abyssal Sleep also takes 4 Dark, only does 120, but it double sleeps the opponent's active. If they flip less than 2 heads in a row, they stay asleep. So that's kind of cool, 75% chance to keep them disabled, and it accelerates Darkness Energy. So you could use this in Turbo Dark if we really wanted to go back to that Boswell weak deck for some reason. Yeah, I mean, there's Darkrai GX that can accelerate itself out of the discard and get some energy. There's the, obviously Darkrai EX is what you would go into with this. I think you could probably just bench this and then Ninja Boy into Darkrai EX, and that gives you your attacker straight away. So that's kind of neat. And yeah, just get a lot of energy in play. We will, I think, see this come up later if somebody plays Dark Box, because that does want to get a ton of energy down and can transfer them around as well. So the card will eventually be useful. Right now is not necessarily that time though. Then we get to Lunala, and Solgaleo does the same sort of thing here, so we'll go over them both at the same time. Lunala has 160 HP again, same as the other legendaries over here. Prism Star is its main attack. For each of the opponent's Pokemon in play, attach a Psychic Energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way that you like. The Solgaleo does the same thing, but for Metal instead. This one's going to be more useful, just like Lunala and Solgaleo have always been here, just because the Metal stuff is more potent right now, unfortunately. Psychic just doesn't have a lot to go into. But their attacks are at least like both noteworthy. Psystorm for 4 Psychic Energy does 20 for each energy on every Pokemon in play. Kind of like the, initially it was on Gardevoir EX, and then Delphox was the other main one that had it, which was really cool. So it's potent, it does a minimum of 80, but every energy you have, every energy the opponent has, all sort of add up to this, so it's probably going to end up doing like 160 to 200 damage, which is really powerful in the end. Next set, this actually becomes pretty good. Solgaleo just does 160 damage for that same energy cost of 4 colored energy, but it can't attack next turn. That's perfectly fine for the deck that it's in, because we already spoke about Mount Coronet to get energy back. You can literally just pay retreat on this thing, and then attack with your next thing. It's totally fine. Dawnwings and Dustmane Necrozma come in this set as well. The Dawnwings Necrozma over here is 180 HP Dark Weak Pokemon. That is very unfortunate in a Zoroark age, but it does still see play at times because Invasion is absolutely busted. It is Russian. Once during your turn, if it's on the bench, you may switch it with your active Pokemon. So it does actually see play, because once again it is a basic Pokemon that does this, whereas Zoroark is a stage 1 that is sometimes awkward to get into play, and also much easier to snipe down at 100 HP. It's got 2 attacks as well, but they both take triple Psychic, so you're only ever going to see this next set potentially in Malamar decks, which is where this makes its best home. 120 damage for the triple Psychic, not affected by resistance, not a very good attack, but at least it one-shots Buzzwole, so there is that. And then Moon's Eclipse GX. This is where the prize gimmick, because it technically is an Ultra Beast, that might come up as well actually, because it's got the tag on it for later. You may only use Moon's Eclipse if you are behind on prizes, so 3 Psychic Energy for 180 damage, but it also gives you automatic agility as well. This effect ends up being really good later on a different GX Pokemon. I don't remember it being used too much here, but 180 damage is enough to one-shot Lele. So you can like gust up Lele, bring this thing in, do 180, make it immune next turn so the opponent has to gust around it in order to do any damage. And if they can't do that, that's a free turn that you've just given yourself, so you can then do whatever from there. Pretty cool. On to the fighting type Pokemon. Rampardos suffers from being a fossil, but otherwise is ridiculous. Pretty good HP and 2 excellent attacks here. For 1 fighting energy, 60 damage, plus 60 more if the opponent's an evolution. Yeah, that's a single prizer that one-shot Zoroark without Choice Band. Pretty cool. Wild Crash is an automatic knockout if the opponent is a basic Pokemon. Does take free fighting energy, which is difficult to do, but it is also counter energy compatible, so that ends up actually being kind of cool. And fighting type stuff does get some specific help that could make this work later, which is really neat. But the problem is it's a fossil, so it's very difficult to sort of get into play. But hey, in the tag team format later on, that's actually a really cool effect to have. Finally, we can talk about the Garchomp and the Lucario stuff over here. Lucario specifically requires Garchomp in play for it to be relevant, because the rest of its stats are not too great. Missile Jab, whatever. I guess it doesn't even kill Zoroark with Choice Band, so nobody cares. But if Lucario's in play, and you have a Garchomp in play, you can computer search your deck for any card, put it into the hand. This is very relevant for the Garchomp, because Garchomp requires Cynthia to be played this turn in order to do its best damage, which is 200 by the way. 200 on a single prizer. Ridiculous. There are so many holes in this deck though, it is really not good, and no amount of help is going to make that happen, because it just takes too many moving parts to get set up, and then you need to keep doing it every turn as well. Energy acceleration is the obvious issue with this, but oh well. Very cool card though. But yeah, obvious combo is obvious, doesn't work out as well as you would like. There is a Hippopotas in here. We don't normally even bother talking about this sort of thing, but I am pretty sure I remember seeing some very dumb decks that had this at one point. 90 HP dude, 3 energy to retreat, so I guess it's technically Heavy Ball searchable. Whoop-de-fricka-doo. 11th hour tackle is insane. For fighting and double colors, it only does 50, but if you have 3 or fewer cards left in your own deck, it does 180. What? Yeah, so it's very silly and not like the best card out there, but it's super funny, and I think I have seen like a meme ladder stuff with it in the past, so very, very weird. Hippowdon doesn't do anything good though, so nobody really cares. Persimmon revitalizes that deck and actually makes it a pretty big threat too. It's not very good for its attack. Its retreat cost is nice because you can escape board it, but it's here for the ability. As long as it's on the bench, your Persimmon's attacks do 30 more damage to the opponent's active evolution Pokemon. That is actually key to note, it is evolution. I kind of forgot about that little snippet there. But this means that you can really take out a lot of the bigger Pokemon for the stuff here. This card's not as good as I thought it was. I thought it was just all Pokemon that did more damage to. But it still lets you do... With a couple of Persimmon in play, this can let you, like a couple of these in play, and then 2 of the other one, you can do 160 damage to evolutions, 190 with a Choice Band. That's actually really good. So, it's still strong, but not quite as crazy as I thought it was. So, I might be a little bit less enthused to try this now. I remember seeing some decks that played like 2 Gladion, because they only played 1 copy of the team play Persimmon. I thought that was kind of ridiculous, but I can almost see why now. I don't know. Card is really cool though, so we'll see if it does anything. There's Murkrow, I think, is slightly better than the other one. I think the Whirlwind one was the one that saw play in the deck list that I saw from Japan for Honchkrow, but I like this one being able to block retreat. I think that's probably better than making the opponent switch. So yeah. Sneasel also is actually worth noting because it's the best Sneasel we have now, and we already had a good Weavile before. We're about to talk about another one too. Sneaky Smash is very silly. If you go second on your first turn of the game, you get to discard an energy from one of the opponent's Pokemon. So if you do go second and you lead this, they're going to think twice about attaching an energy because you're just going to discard it, right? So that can force some very weird things on turn 1, and I do like that. It's also for a colorless, so you can play like counter energy on in turn 1 as well. It's pretty good. Weavile is super strong. I wish we had Level Ball is the only thing, but I don't know, maybe Level Ball wouldn't work in the deck anyway, so who cares. Evil Admonition is the attack that we are interested in here. For 1 Darkness Energy, 50 damage times the amount of abilities the opponent has in play. Zoroark is all abilities, Tapu Lele's are obviously ability stuff, the Stage 2 setup Pokemon have abilities. This is probably going to do like 150 damage minimum in most games, and that is kind of absurd for a single energy. So yeah, really strong attacker for the deck, and it combos quite well with the Rule of Evil Weavile, which does 60 to each Pokemon in play with an ability. So yeah, very cool. On to the metal stuff. I've been hyping it up for quite a bit. This is not one of them, but it is a very funny meme card at the least. Alolan Dugtrio, 60 HP is actually kind of relevant in the future, because there's Professor Elm's something, I forget exactly what it's called. No, it's not Training Method, that was the old one. There's one that lets you search 3 Pokemon with 60 HP or less out of the deck. This could technically get searched by it, it's very funny. You, for 0 energy, discard as many metals from your hand as you like, and do 30 for each card you discarded in this way. If we still had Superior Energy Retrieval, this would be a crazy cool deck, because Superior plus Mount Coronet would be just ridiculous. Unfortunately, that is not the case, and regular Energy Retrieval I don't think is quite enough here, but this card is super funny, and yeah, I don't know, you can do a lot of damage with this at least, so it's fun. Don't know if it's going to be played, but whatever. Magnemites do have a couple of good variants here actually. Searching Magnet is pretty interesting for 1 energy on, both of them are 60 HP by the way, but like Searching Magnet, pretty good. Search your deck for up to 3 metal energy cards, put them into the hand. That's very solid with the Magnet Zone that we'll get to, but the other Magnemite doesn't take bench damage. It is an ability, so sometimes that can be a liability, but it's like Rule of Evil doesn't actually hit it, so that's kind of neat, I suppose. So yeah, very good depending on just what you want, really. I guess this one can do damage for 1 energy, but that's rarely going to come up as important. So, I don't know. I think the bench reduction one was the one that saw play at the time, but I ended up playing this one in the future when I played this with Mewtwo and Mew later on, so yeah. Magneton's nothing special, but that's okay. Magnezone is the one we're interested in here. Oddly enough, it's a 2 energy retreat, which is really annoying for the deck, because you would love to play Heavy Ball in this deck, because all of your attackers are Heavy Ball searchable, but this is not, so that's frustrating. Anyway, 150 HP, pretty good. Magnetic Circuit is Deluge or Rain Dance, but for metal energy. So just attach as many metal energy as you like from your hand to your Pokemon. It's kind of great. Its own attack is passable enough as well. Zap Cannon takes a lot of energy, 3 metal and a colorless, and it can't be used in consecutive turns. But it does do 130 damage, which is enough to do a decent dent into things. And with a Choice Band, I guess that would be 160. That's not quite enough to do anything super relevant. But yeah, I mean, 130 is enough to KO other 1 prizes quite often. So, unless they're like stage 2 exactly. So, it's okay. The stuff that it goes well with though, Heatran is decent enough. Basically very similar to the previous Heatran that we had. Its main trait is 2 metal and a colorless to do 130 and discard 2 energy from it. 2 energy specifically is fine because you can Coronet those back, so you can just keep doing 130 every turn. Pretty good for 130 HP, like 1 prize attacker, so that's decent. Obviously the Solgaleo is great, but the main thing it goes with is Duskmane the Crowsman. This is Sai's deck for the round. 190 HP basic, so on the higher end of the basic Pokemon. Not the highest we've seen, but pretty good. And it's very much like the... It's a sort of Charizard style thing, I guess is the best way of putting this. Claw Slash for 3 colors does 60 damage, exactly the same as what Wing Attack used to do on Charizard EX. but Meteor Tempest is a little different. 3 metal and the colorless energy to do 220 damage. Uh-oh. You have to discard free energy from this Pokemon, but as we've established with Mount Coronet and Magnezone, that is totally fine. One fun thing to note is that you can discard double colorless with this, and that discards 2 of the free energy you need. So you can keep a lot of energy on it in order to make it easier to power up consecutive hits. You also have a GX attack, which is just absurd when you read this. I don't know why it has to do 250 damage for free metal energy, but it does. You can only use it if you are behind on prizes, so that's such a great... But it's like, yeah, you can do this and then you can just Meteor Tempest the turn after. Absolutely absurd. So yeah, this card is a GX killing machine and doesn't even need Choice Band. You don't even play Choice Band. Because what's the point? You're doing 220 damage. That's enough to KO basically everything that's relevant. The only Stage 2 GX I think that is even played at the moment is technically weak to metal. So you just kill it anyway. So yeah, really, really strong. Finally, Magearna is actually pretty cool as well. Once per turn, you can return a Pokemon tool from one of your Pokemon to the hand. So this basically eclipses the Genesect EX that was played before, because Genesect EX is really not that good of an attacker at this point. We've just shown an attacker that's like 1,000,000 times better. And if you really want that sort of effect, you can now have it in any deck, which is pretty neat. Finally, on to the fairy stuff here. We have Shinotic is a retrain of the Grass-type one from Sun and Moon base set. Once per turn, search your deck for a fairy Pokemon, put it into hand. I really like this kind of thing, but historically it's just not been very strong unless it's in the evolution line. You know, like Gabite with Dragon Call, or Sunshine Grace later on we'll see on a Grovyle. That's pretty good. As a standalone Pokemon that doesn't do anything else, this really hasn't seen play ever. I just think that's a shame. But hey, it's still kind of cool, I suppose. And then finally, we have access to this. I'm annoyed that we still don't get the Psychic one right now, but, you know, because Japan had the Psychic one for absolutely ages. But we get the Fairy type retrain of Tapu Lele, which is super helpful. 110 HP, fine enough, 1 retreat, pretty good. Psywave, whatever, maybe it comes up sometimes, 1 Fairy energy, 20 damage times the number of energy on the opponent's active. Okay, I suppose. There's probably nothing it's gonna kill, but sure. Maybe it kills a Lele GX that got too big for its boots. Now, what we're here for is Magical Swap. Fairy and the colorless, or counter energy basically, move any number of damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon to their other Pokemon in any way that you like. I have wanted to build a truly competent spread-focused deck for so long. And I couldn't, because we didn't get the Psychic Lele released for decades, it felt like. This is the one that I need for it. It's specific for counter energy, but I would have to do that in the deck anyway. It's fine. We get to do the same thing as we would do with Spiritomb, but for including the actives damage, so we can move everything the way that we want. Very, very nice. So yeah, needless to say, looking forward to using this card. On to the Dragon-type stuff. There's Alolan Executor, which isn't great. You can evolve all of your benched Execute. I guess that's cute. Would be very funny to play this with Venusaur, because you get to double the Grass energy attaches, and for each energy that you have on you, Grass specifically, flip a coin, do 80 for each heads. So if you've got 2 energy and a Venusaur in play, that's 4 total, average of 160 damage. It's very flippy and you need Victini as well, but it is funny. So I guess if you really wanted to make a worse version of the deck from last round, the Shining Genesect thing, this would be your boy. And then yeah, I've already talked a little bit about the Garchomp. 150 HP, 0 retreat is pretty good. Quick Dive, not quite enough damage, but DC, Snipe 50, okay. We saw that on Ninetales GX and it was fine there, but not so good on the Stage 2. And Royal Blades does 100 for a fighting and a double colorless, but if you played Cynthia specifically this turn, 100 more damage. It's like, the payoff is really good, because with a Choice Band that KOs Gardevoir, and like Devoured Field is also a play, so you could do 210, so you basically get to one-shot like everything, but the setup is so specific, and you kind of have to play the Lucario, because if you don't play Lucario, then you don't get to search Cynthia every turn, and you have to recover the Cynthia with Power Pad, and it's just a mess. Like, there's so little that, you know, you have for leeway here, and there's no energy acceleration, so the fact that it takes 2 attaches, one of which being a DCE that can easily be removed, far too many holes, unfortunately. It's a shame because there's a Gible with Ascension that's kind of okay, the Gabite has got Ascension, so that can also sometimes help, and the other Gible retreats for free when it's got Fighting Energy on it, and we still have the Fighting type Garchomp from Fates Collide, so that means you can Brooklet Hill for a Gible if you play that one. There's a lot of cool stuff going for it, but it's so awkward in setup that it just doesn't work. Then we get Dragon-type Sword Dialga and Palkia. It's very silly actually that we got these ones first and not their regular types, because you would think these are supposed to work with Cyrus, but Cyrus doesn't work with Dragon types, so kinda stupid. Anyway, both of them 180 HP, 3 energy retreat, very similarly structured. They've got a 1 energy attack, a 3 energy attack, and a 5 energy GX attack. I would normally be very annoyed at the amount of energy the GX attacks take, but they're both kind of busted, so it makes sense here. Dialga is the one we'll see played because it's played with the Magnezone. Overclock draws until you have 6 cards in hand for 1 Metal Energy. That's sometimes you'll need that as a setup card, I suppose, so cool. Shred only does 80 damage, but it goes through all effects on the opponent's active, so you get to use this into the Hooper matchup, I suppose, which is fine. You probably just Magnezone the Hooper though, so whatever. And then Timeless GX for triple metal and a double colorless energy does 150 damage, which doesn't sound like a lot for even for a GX attack on a single prize like this. However, if you use this attack, you literally just take another turn immediately. You skip the in-between turn phases, so you don't take like poison damage and stuff like that, I suppose. That's kind of interesting. The opponent still has to promote another Pokemon if you KO them though, and you just literally take the next turn. It's very silly. This is ridiculous against single prize decks, and is probably one of the reasons, other than obviously Dustmane can do KOs on the GXs, this thing keeps the single prize decks honest, because you essentially get to, it reads, take 2 prizes in a row, and that can be very difficult for them to beat, especially if you're smart about it and you do this as the last 2 prizes. So take a KO with Timeless and then go into Dustmane and just KO whatever from there. Palkia is much less good even when it gets its alt-type retrain. Obviously being a dragon type it can't use Aqua Patch, which is a really big annoyance, and it really would want to as well when you read what the attacks do. Spatial Command moves any number of energy from your bench to this Pokemon, and then this just gets KO'd and you die, so what's the point? Hydro Pressure for triple colorless energy does 60 plus 20 for each water that's on this Pokemon. That's not even a lot of damage, to be honest. 120 is the baseline here. Okay. At least it scales beyond the initial hit, so 0 vanishes 5 energy cost doesn't sound quite as bad, but yeah, 3 water, double colorless, 150, so the same as the Dialga, but instead of taking an extra turn, which is objectively the most ridiculous thing in the world, this shuffles all the energy from each of the opponent's Pokemon into their deck, which is equally ridiculous, but very situational in comparison. Not every deck is going to be vulnerable to that. So I don't know. Bad card. It doesn't even matter whether it gets the water type thing. Still a bad card. Finally, the color stuff. There's nothing really here, unfortunately. We mentioned the Guru already. This is gross. The Silvally gets its alternate artwork, which was really cool. Technically, the Type Null is actually the best one that we have at the moment. If the opponent's active has any damage cannons on it, it does 60 for a double colorless, as opposed to 30 reduced by 30. This just does more damage, so sometimes that's going to come up. And another theme deck staple was the Gumshoes. 2 energy to do 20 damage, and you make the opponent reveal their hand. If there's a Pokemon there, 80 more damage. That is kind of neat. It's designed to synergize with Gumshoe's GX, where you get to just reveal the opponent's hand once per turn, so you know if they have a Pokemon there, and if they do, you can just do 100 damage for a relatively modest cost, to be honest. But 100 damage doesn't really go that far at the moment. It technically is a 2-shot on anything with a choice band. But is that really where you want to be with your double colorless when you can just play Zoroark? You know, and have a draw power thing and do 120 for the same energy cost and maybe hit for weakness, you know? Even if it's against a fairy type, it still does 100, so it's the same thing. Yeah, in the main game it's not good, but it was very funny for theme deck stuff. Somehow I think this has ended up being the longest of the set descriptions so far, but that should probably just go to show how many good cards are in this set. There's a lot to go over. We might be taking 2 sessions in this one to line up a little bit more with IRL release stuff. As I'm recording this, Paradox Rift is in pre-release stage, so Pepper is going to need some time to go over the stuff to add it to the mod. So we might be taking more time in this one just to show as much stuff as possible off here. So I hope you have enjoyed yourselves, however, on this. Thank you very much for listening to the conversation here. And next time, we'll be doing some battles with this. Until then, take care.